Yeah, you're not.
Let's roll the clocks back to mid-November 2001. The Tony Mo you know today is a mere 11 years old. He's sitting in the grandstands at his local fairground watching a freestyle motocross exhibition. One of the announcers gets on the mic after one of the riders finishes their run and says, "You know, you might be one of the best riders on the circuit right now, but I can still kick your ass at Halo." Halo. Halo, I think, is one game among the hundreds of games I already played at that point in my life that managed to make a greater impact on me than any game before. I mean, I grew up with video games. Zelda, Metroid, Earthbound, like you name it. I played a lot of games as a kid. Pretty much every opportunity I had before I had a job for someone to give me a gift, that gift was usually a video game of some sort, whether it was on the Super NES, the NES, the N64. You know, that point in my life, that period from the NES to the N64 was just filled with different games. It didn't matter what kind of game they were. You know, action sports games, Tony Hawk, shooters, Duke Nukem, adventure games, Super Mario, like, you know, Jet Force Gemini. Just the list went on and on. I loved playing new games. My life, though, was also quite diverse. I engaged in a lot of different hobbies. My parents strongly believed in me trying everything that I could try to find the things that I might love deeply. Video games were just kind of a household thing, but I grew up with mechanics and motorcycles and firearms and hunting and archery. And I also grew up with a lot of sports thanks to my cousins who were just like another brother and sisters to me. You know, I played a lot of baseball, a lot of ice hockey because of them. I had a very diverse upbringing. I spent a lot of time on my bicycle. But if there's one thing that has stuck with me through my entire life, it has been video games. They've always just connected with me in a very specific way. Before Halo, though, I was not only young and didn't have a lot of money, but I also lived at a point in time when the internet wasn't just like a readily accessible thing. You know, I didn't have a way to stay up to date on all of the upcoming releases and all the latest and greatest news. I didn't have a way to research the process behind game development or the developers who are making the games that I loved so very much. I just kind of played what was there. I went to my local flea market. I asked the guy who worked at the shop what he thought was, you know, great, and that's what I would spend my hard-earned allowance on, eventually my paper route money on. But when Halo came out, when I heard about Halo and the Xbox, I suddenly had a deeper interest in video games and the industry as a whole. I knew that the Xbox blew me away. It looked as staggeringly special, I guess you could say, for me at that point in time, as anything I had ever seen on my uncle's PC. You know, the time I had spent playing Unreal Tournament, Quake, and Soldier of Fortune, it just looked so over the top, so like this is the next great thing and I want to see what's up with it. I want to experience it. So shortly after that point in my life, that very specific moment when I heard the word Halo, a good friend of mine got an original Xbox. And the first thing he did was buy a copy of Halo. Him and I had been talking about it for weeks after we were at that freestyle motocross event, and he picked up a copy of Halo. He grabbed a second controller his parents got him, and I can remember heading down to his basement. We plugged it into one of his old TVs down there. We sat on this big leather sofa with this space heater, all warm on this nice leather sofa, and he handed me this huge controller, the Duke. And he said, "You can use this thing. It's too big for my hands. I'm going to use this." And he had a Nyko controller with a fan in the back of it. And he came on down. His little sister came down, actually. It was about the same age as us at the time. And she was already really interested into it. She grew up playing a lot of games as well. And we all just sat there and started playing Halo. We played a little bit of the campaign, and then we dove right into the multiplayer. We wanted to know what it was all about. And honestly, from there, things just snowballed. I just remember thinking this was one of the coolest things I had ever played. It reminded me of, you know, the time I spent just killing bots in Unreal Tournament and in Quake on my uncle's PC. And suddenly I was like engaging against my friend in combat. It was just like, it was like GoldenEye, but different, but better. And it felt more consistent. It felt as if I could play it forever, and as if there were actually things within the game that were testing my ability to understand the game. You know, there was skill involved in a first-person shooter at a level that I hadn't really experienced before. It was such a revolution for me. And again, that would just snowball. We would play Halo every day for years, you know, and then Halo 2 would come out, Halo 3 would come out. Halo would be a huge part of my life for over a decade. We would be throwing LAN parties when Halo 2 was out in my friend's basement with 16 people. It changed the way that my friends and I socially interacted around games. It brought back the days of 4-player split screen and GoldenEye and just took it to a whole new level. The bigger side effect of all of that, though, was that I suddenly became unbelievably interested in how games were made and the industry revolving around them. I wanted to know about the latest releases. I wanted to know about the hardware and the software. I wanted to know about the people who are making these games. Halo just came across as something so spectacular that I needed to know how it was made, why it was made, and who made it. And while I never really found all those answers at that point in my life, it put me in a position where I was suddenly buying every single magazine off of every shelf I saw. If I walked into Blockbuster to rent a game with my brother that weekend and I had paper route money in my pocket, I bought the latest copy of PC Gamer, of OXM for the demo disc especially. 1UP was still a thing at that point in time. GamePro, I just absorbed it all. And when I got excited about a game like Halo 2, I bought everything with Halo 2 on the cover, no matter how big or how small. And I plastered it on my bedroom wall and I waited. And I just put myself in a position where suddenly it wasn't just about like the next game release. It was just about like the surprise, I guess you could say, the excitement value behind a new game with new tech, with new ideas coming out. I was so addicted to the idea of watching these games innovate and change. And that was probably one of the biggest periods in the industry as of late, where innovation was just, it seemed like it was everywhere. People were trying new ideas. We had so much middleware being produced. Even if the games didn't end up being great, maybe they did one or two things that no one had ever done before. You know, it was the same spectacular way I felt when I played Killswitch, this game with this cover-based system. So imagine my surprise when Gears of War announces it's making a cover-based shooter not too long after that. There was just a really special point in video games that I got to be a very big part of, and it really did shape who I was, because suddenly I was very interested again into the industry as a whole, and I turned that into sort of this obsession to educate myself. You know, I was just like this walking encyclopedia. All my friends knew to ask me about the next game. Even people in school at that point in my life would come to me and be like, "Hey, Tony, are you picking up this? What do you think of it?" You know, like, I just became known as that person. I went to a smaller school, so like word got around fast. People knew who people were, and there may or may not have been points in my life where I skipped school to play games for midnight releases. So I definitely built up a bit of a reputation as that person who liked to talk about games. And you know what? You could say that there were some negatives to that, right? There's a negative to being obsessed or addicted to anything, but I think I actually got fortunate enough to experience almost all of the positives that come from just having that sort of addiction to knowledge, to information, because I used video games as a social interaction tool. And I went from this very shy person coming out of elementary school, going into middle school, you know, this very just quiet person, didn't want to talk to too many people other than my immediate friends, to someone who would talk to anyone if it revolved around video games. And a couple years of that, a couple years of being able to butt in on people's conversations when I heard them say something about Grand Theft Auto or Halo or, you know, whatever game was coming around the corner, also put me in a position where suddenly I realized I could talk to anyone about anything. It didn't have to be something that interested me. I could suddenly hold a conversation. And it did something for me that school wasn't able to do. It made me good at public speaking. It made me confident in my ability to talk about things that I knew things about, and even confident in my ability to hold a conversation with people about things that I didn't understand. So suddenly, it was easy for me to talk to anyone in the school, regardless of the clique they aligned with or the interest they had. And I did. I made a lot of friendships, a lot of relationships that way. But especially with people who were also interested in games, because I knew I could hold a conversation with them for the rest of my life. And I had so many amazing friendships, maybe people who I'm not friends with right now, some people who have been lifelong friends around video games. And dare I say, although it is very difficult for us as humans to ever pinpoint one specific component of the many components that will shape our futures, that have shaped our lives, that Halo had so much to do with that. Again, there was just something about that experience that sparked my interest in games in a way that simply hadn't been sparked before. And it did shape very much who I am today. I would never have went on YouTube had I not developed that confidence throughout my elementary and high school years and decided that I wanted to talk with other people about my thoughts and my opinions on video games. You know, I suddenly came to a point in my life where I realized, wow, there's this platform where I could just talk to like everyone, essentially, an infinite number of people potentially, about video games. How cool is that? You know, if you told me when I was 11, 10, 9, 8 years old, this little kid who didn't even want to sit in the front at chorus with like 40 other kids to sing because I was afraid someone would see I wasn't good at this and I wasn't really interested in it, that I was going to talk to the internet about video games and share my opinion with them and share some of my most wonderful memories and moments with them, I would have called you the biggest liar ever. I would have called bullshit times 10, you know? I would have been like, you kidding me? I don't even like to talk to anyone outside of my immediate family. But after Halo and after I just started becoming obsessed, again, for better or worse, with video games as a whole, I became a different person. And I do very much owe games as a whole, I think, for my ability to talk to people the way I do, to hold a conversation the way I do. It was also always, I think, a big part of my family as well. So it's a multi-tiered thing. But Halo, again, was sort of this spark that ignited a very different part of me that I didn't really know existed. And it's that part of me today that is still deep down inside that keeps me making videos for YouTube, that keeps me holding conversations with you guys like this that are very heartfelt and you know, a lot of people would say goofy, but the reality is, as humans, we consume a lot of entertainment, you know, whether it be creative entertainment or non-creative entertainment, passive entertainment. You know, it's all about how we absorb that entertainment and the things that we allow that entertainment to do to us mentally and emotionally. And for the case with video games and Halo, I think I've always managed to pull as much positivity out of them as I possibly can, which has brought me to where I am today. You know, the ability to make money talking online about something that I love very, very deeply. And I do owe, at least in a small part, where I am today to Halo. So, Bungie, thank you for making that damn game. It did a lot more for me than I think anyone can ever really truly fathom or imagine. But you know what? I think we all have something in our lives along the way. And maybe you haven't found it yet, but that you will. Whether it be a piece of entertainment, an object, you know, a situation, a person, an individual even, who will say something or allow us to do something or experience something that truly has a transformative effect in our future and in the person we are and how we develop. So if you feel like you know what that is, you feel like you remember that point in your life and you want to share that, then this is the time to do that. I love good heartfelt discussions. If you want to be interested in that, if you want to keep it private, I understand as well. And if you're young and you haven't really gotten there yet, who knows? You know, I really do think there are a lot of things that influences in our lives, but there are those things that stand out, you know, the way you interact with your parents, the way that your parents talk to you at the dinner table was always a big one for me. They always urged me to share my stories and conversations for the day, and I think that has a lot to do with my gift for gab as well. There's a multitude of things, but if you can pinpoint any one of them and you feel like sharing them, feel free to do so down in the comment section below. I hope you guys have an outstanding Friday, a great weekend, and I will see you in the next one.
You would have been brought here for a purpose, the most important task of your lives.